and she says that you need $5 million in today's day and age to retire early. And my question to you, God, is what the fuck is this lady smoking? What is going on? You need $5 million to retire early? What kind of fucking bullshit is this that she's
No, that makes
propagating?
sense. Well, that's that sounds like a good amount.
Yeah, I think $5 million is a little fucking ridiculous. I got to be completely honest with you. If you look at the Trinity study, right, and for those of you who don't know, the Trinity study is this whole premise that you take 25 times your annualized expenses, and that's the amount you need to retire. And then at that point, you can enact a 4% withdrawal rule. And in the process, you minimize your biggest expenses, which are housing, cars, and anything that doesn't add extra value to your life. And at 4% of that amount, at 4% withdrawal of 25 times your annualized expenses, you're effectively able to retire. But the major underlying assumptions there is that the stock market will continue to produce better than average or average returns over the course of your span of retirement, and you're not going to have any sort of major life changes that can increase your expenses. And obviously, as we all know, everyone has a plan. Like Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. So it seems that obviously life can just change at a moment's notice. So taking 25 times your expenses now in any sort of current situation and taking that and extrapolating it over the span of 50 or 60 years is a little uncommon to do, and it's probably not too consistent. But at the same time, it looks like societally there's been some major shifts towards minimalism, and there's been some major movements towards tiny housing and living in alternative housing units. So people are looking to use what they can to survive without depriving themselves, like teetering on that line, but not falling into deprivation. Now, if you ask me, in my opinion, this is obviously the advice, and it's for entertainment purposes, of course. It's yours truly, Paul Pelosi, so this is for entertainment purposes. But if you ask me, I think anyone can retire with $1 million. It sounds nuts in this day and age, right? Especially with this rampant inflation environment, and there's a lot of
No,
wacky
no,
shit
no.
going on. But I think you could retire realistically with $1 million. I think it depends on where you want to live. If you want to live in a low cost of living city or state, or potentially a commonwealth where you wouldn't be subjected to federal income taxes, I think $1 million is more than fair. At a 4% withdrawal rate, that you're looking at $40,000 a year. If you
No,
live in
no, no.
certain markets, particularly cheaper markets within the southern part of the United States, or even some Rust Belt areas, you could realistically live, and assuming you have a housing payment, like you have a mortgage payment or whatever, if you don't have a house that's fully paid off, you can very easily live or rent and pay, I don't know, $800 a month in rent, $700 a month in rent, and $40,000, you actually could get a pretty good living. You're not gonna live like a millionaire with $1 million, but you'll have a comfortable living for yourself.
No, I have to totally disagree with that. The 4% rule, right? It's a total bullshit rule, total nonsense rule that was based on people living a certain time frame. I think by the time, people our age retire, people are going to be living much longer, and I think that rule is going to be totally antiquated. I think we're going to go by this new rule that I have. It's called the God rule. This is basically the best rule. You basically take. Yeah, I think the 4% rule is totally antiquated. It's total bullshit. People are going to be living much longer, so basically that rule is not going to be applicable. So if you have $5 million, right, you get a 20% return. So that would basically be $1 million. Then you have to pay tax on the $1 million. So basically you would receive $850,000. Then, right, you have to basically provide a buffer for yourself for inflation. So you have to take $5 million. You have to take 5% of $5 million. That's basically $250,000. Minus that off the 850. That's 600. And then you have to have a 2.5% growth rate. So 2.5 of 5 million would be 125. So take that off, 475 a year. So basically, you have to have a 5% inflation buffer and a 2.5% growth rate so that your money lasts forever. It's not a 4% rule where your money lasts for 25 years. You want your money to last forever, and you want to form a dynasty.
Particularly the Trinity study in general, you could actually back test the results of this using something called the Monte Carlo simulation. For those of you who don't know, the Monte Carlo simulation is used to predict the probability of different outcomes when intervention of random variables is present. So Monte Carlo simulations can help people understand the impact of risk and uncertainty in prediction and forecasting models. So like some good examples of Monte Carlo simulations are determining the probability of your opponent's move in chess, determining stock market returns, which is obviously the biggest case and most used case of example, calculating the probability of when it's going to snow, calculating the probability of going over budget, winning at blackjack, so on and so forth. So my biggest problem with Suze Orman is that she seems to kind of pull information out of her ass, right? So for her to come up with this $5 million number, I totally disagree with it. If you look at the current situation, at least with retirement vehicles that the average person has access to, rather that everyone has access to, even if you do not fall within the tax brackets to be able to do this, everyone can open a Roth IRA and can ensure that they're capitalizing on tax-free growth, and at the end of it, they're not going to have a large tax bill waiting for them. Even if you're a single filer and you earn over $120,000 a year, I think the figure is actually $128,000 a year, changes all the time, doesn't really matter. You could do a mega backdoor Roth IRA, which is just a traditional IRA conversion, and then you just convert your traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, and then from there, you end up in the same situation anyway. It's just that, wow, there's one more step. What do you fucking do? But if you think about it this way, with just a Roth IRA, right? Like you can cap out contributions each year with a Roth IRA at $6,000 per year. So you could do that from age 25 to age 60 and have a great retirement. For example, from age 25 to age 65, so that's a span of 40 years, if you achieve the 100-year average of the stock market return adjusted for dividends reinvested and inflation, that comes out to about a 7% annualized return. And at $6,000 a year, assuming you're constantly investing that $6,000 a year, you would have $1,280,000, which is a nice sum. And it will be even more because once you turn the age of 50, you're entitled to what's called catch-up contributions, which allow you to deposit another $1,000 per year up until your retirement. That's pretty awesome because when you actually factor that in, that 1.28 million number is well over 1.5 million. So it's the difference between hundreds of thousands of dollars closer towards retirement.
It's not enough.
Now, if you do that from age 30 to age 65 at a 7% annualized return, investing $6,000 a year, you're left with $887,000, which is very good. That's a very good amount of money. You should be able to comfortably live off that, even after, and this all is adjusted for inflation. It's enough money as long as you don't want to live like a Kardashian, it's enough money. And using these returns, we use the 7% figure as a guideline. It's the 100-year average return of the stock market adjusted for dividends reinvested in inflation. But when you look at the S&P 500 over the last 10 years, the number is 10% per year adjusting for inflation. And the last 20 years is 7% after adjusting for inflation, which you actually think it would be more over the last 20 years given the technological advancement. But 2008 and 2009 are a motherfucker, and it really set everything back. So also you have to think that the dot-com crisis and that whole bubble was in the early 2000s. So I would imagine at that point it was like
where's your growth factor? The money is supposed to grow over time. It's not supposed to be dwindling down when you retire. You're supposed to be.
My main thing is this. This is my main issue I have with people who kind of have this thought of like early retirement, right? I think there's early retirement from working a job you don't like, or early retirement from working a traditional 9 to 5. But if you think that you're just gonna like say, okay, I have $1 million in the bank, this is it, I get to just sit on my ass for the rest of my life, you're not only gonna be miserable, but there's actually been health studies that have concluded that you're actually more prone to dying early when you do nothing. You have to get out, you have to do shit, you have to keep the brain moving, you got to keep your body moving. Unfortunately, a lot of these people, they die young. So you don't want to be one of those people. You don't want to be a statistic in that case.